Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is PJ speaking, and welcome to my talk that's titled Managing Dependencies in Python with Poetry. I just want to introduce myself first. Hi, I'm the stress out guy at the middle. And yes, my name is PJ with quotation marks. I'm a Python developer for the past 5 years and also lead a Python users group based in Cebu, which I will introduce later. And in the picture, there are some of my hobbies. And yeah, that's enough about me. This is what I'm gonna discuss for today. So we'll set our expectations. We're gonna discuss our discussion is gonna revolve around what really is managing dependencies in our Python project. So we'll start with what dependencies are we actually managing? Why do we need to do that? How do we usually do manage dependencies? The important concepts about it. What are the tools that are available to us? And how is poetry gonna make our lives easier in managing dependencies, plus some other feature of poetry. And also I'll introduce PizzaPy again. Okay, let's go to our expectations first. So first of all, this is a beginner-friendly talk. And yes, I expect everyone to, not exactly everyone, I hope I can uh, make everyone understand my topic because it's a pretty critical skill for programming in Python. Not just the data scientists, not just web devs, everyone that programs in Python. Two, I'm gonna have some demos here, but my machine is only on Mac. So that's the only one I have. I don't have Windows. I'll do my best to show the equivalent Windows commands for the demos that I have. Third is I am reducing the scope to just poetry and the basics, which is actually virtual env and pip. Because the problem is there is no one way in managing dependencies in Python. So there are also other ways that I can touch upon, but I will not demonstrate. Okay, so now we've set our expectations. Let's start discussing around managing dependencies. So we'll start with what are the dependencies that are we managing for a Python project? So there are two. So first is your project depends on what Python version that you have to run it on and the packages or the libraries that you are using on your Python project. Now for the Python version, of course, it's up to 3.11 now. The oldest active one is 3.7 since 3.6 was sunset last year. But you may use 3.6 still or 2.7 for whatever reason. And you have to specify what Python version your project is running on. Second, packages. So packages may also use packages, so called dependencies. And each of those packages would have versions. So your project would need to have a specific list of what packages did you install or are you using and the dependencies of those packages, and also the version of each of those packages. So those are the two main dependencies that we're talking about here in our discussion for today. So why do we need to do that? Now, just to go back in Python version, you install it when you go to python.org, or in Mac OS, I use Homebrew, or even aptitude or sudo apt-get in Linux. Packages, you usually use pip, correct, to install packages for your projects. Now, we need to manage dependency, aka we need to stop doing pip install package just straight up on the terminal, because that install packages on your machine globally. So unless you want to use the package globally, like let's say virtual env, you have to install that, or poetry. The rest of the packages that you need to install for a specific project, you don't need to install that on the system because sometimes that might be the same library that one of your system tools that uses Python uses, and that it might mess it up. And sometimes you're not going to be able to do it in the first place because you don't have um, admin access on your machine in the first place. So yeah, one is so that you don't pip install it directly on your system. You shouldn't do that unless that's what you want. Second, so that you can manage different packages or different projects on your own machine. So, I mean, unless you're on Docker or you're on a server, you expect to have multiple projects on your machine. And of course, instead of if you straight pip install, let's say like in our example here, if you straight go pip install package, let's say package C, what it will install is the version that is the latest of package C. And what if you have multiple projects on your on your system that you're managing, and each project would require a different kind of or different version of that package. That's going to be an issue, and that has to be resolved with part of managing dependencies. Reason three. So let's say we have the same project and we are using two packages. Those two packages require the same library, but they have different version requirements with that same package. Let's say one needs less than or better than 1.0 or equal to, and then package B needs less than 1.3. Let's say package C already has 1.4. Then part of managing dependencies is resolving that dependency to get the best version where we can both make package A and package B work with the same package in our installation. So in this case, since this is the requirement, then it decides to do version 1.2. So managing version conflicts for each package. Reason number three, code reproducibility. So we have to, if we want to like install also our own projects to another machine, let's say to a Docker container, to a server, or a colleague would want to like use your project or also code in it, you need to have a list or way to list what Python version you use and what packages you use and the versions of Python that you use. So yes, this is a good practice to list all the requirements that you needed to run your project so that someone else can reproduce what you did without hitch. Okay, that's reason number four. And lastly, which is a shocking reason, some packages might be security risks. So this is a recent news, this December, that they found that some PyPy packages contains malware that might steal your credentials. So having good dependency management systems that would either, instead of installing it with elevated privileges, since you pip installed it to your system, then that reduces the risk that they can run on your system. Or two, you found out that you have installed a malicious package, you can easily remove that package from your project or projects. So yeah, so those are 5 good reasons why you have to listen to my talk. Okay, now, how do we do them exactly? How do we manage dependencies? So there are 3 important concepts here. So we have the virtual environment, we have the package manager, and the package repository. So just to describe the 3 and how they interact with each other. So the virtual environment, this is actually an isolated environment where instead of using the binaries that you have or the Python that you have on your system, you can have another set of binaries or Python binaries in a separate folder, and also you also locate a separate folder there for your libraries instead of the libraries you install in your system. And yeah, that's already isolated, and you can create a separate environment for each project, since your each projects would have different requirements or dependencies. So that's a virtual environment. Package manager, basically pip. So that's the one that you use for downloading your packages. And you usually use that, well, instead of using it on system, you can use it on the virtual environment. And then it will download the packages on the environment instead of the system. Package manager also downloads the dependencies of that certain package. And sometimes, depends on the package manager, resolves the version conflict between packages and also records or list all the packages that it has installed on a certain environment. And where does the package manager get its packages? It's from the package repository. It could be PyPy or Python package index. It could be a private repository, which you can do, but I won't discuss. And it might be Anaconda or some other repository. So how do we do it in code? We'll do it using virtual env as the provider for our virtual environment. We'll use pip for the package manager and we'll download packages from PyPy. Now, I will do it the old way, just if ever you don't know or you want to be refreshed. So here it goes. So how I will just create my first my own folder containing my project, sample project. Okay. I will also check if I have a virtual environment already, since a lot of times virtual env is not included on the Python package on the fresh install. So let me check on that. So Python 3-m, looking for the binaries for Python, pip, which is usually pre-installed, pip install virtual env. This is also applicable in Windows, by the way. And yep, already satisfied since I already have that. So that's the first critical step, install virtual env. Now, next, as I've mentioned, I will have to um, have a separate virtual environment per project on inside the folder of the project. So I will go inside the project. Okay. And then I will run virtual env. The name of the folder, I would usually want to name it that way so that it's also hidden, but not for Windows. Virtual env dash Python. And then I would like to use 3.9. My system is actually on 3.11. Okay. I'll discuss later why I did not use venv or pyenv. But again, I'm creating a project that is on Python 3.9. Also, on this method, you can only use Python versions that are already installed in your system. So yeah, that's a catch, by the way. Okay, let's check what's inside the newly created virtual environment folder. So that's ls-venv. Okay, so you see there's the bin folder, this lib folder, and the pyenv config file. So inside the bin, we have an activate. This is the bash script for activating our virtual environment. There is and also different methods. And there are the binaries that we use to, instead of the system, this is what we'll use: the pip binary, the Python binary, and the wheel binary for installing packages. Okay, so that's what's inside. And then inside lib, we have the library details. Okay, so that's what's inside the virtual environment. So instead of using the system, we'll just use the binaries and libraries inside this folder. So to enter the virtual environment, I will first demonstrate on Windows. So this is the name of your folder where you put the virtual environment, capital S scripts, and activate that PS1. That is if you're running this on CMD. But for Linux and Mac, you can do source.venv bin activate. You can see this is also applicable on CMD that you have this, whatever is the parenthesis, this is the name of your environment. So you're already inside the virtual environment. So just to check, I did download Python 3.9 instead of my 3.11, just to check my version. I am on 3.9. Just to prove it to you, I will how to exit the virtual environment. I type deactivate, also the same with Windows, and then Python 3. Since my Python is still 2.7, if I type Python version, I'm using 3.11 for my system. Okay, now going back, I want to install, or I want to use OpenAI. The package is OpenAI, and how do I, which is a wrapper for Stack Overflow. So to install packages, you do pip install OpenAI space how do I, and then space other packages that you will install. So let's install that one. So it would install both OpenAI and how do I, and also the dependencies or the packages that are needed to run those two packages. That's why it's installing a lot of stuff. Okay. Okay. Now, yeah, so that's how we install packages the old way. Now, I want to list my packages. You can do pip list. This is the list of our packages installed inside our virtual environment. Okay. Now, I don't want to use how do I anymore. So I have to delete how do I, and also I want my virtual environment and I want the project to be clean, to include only the dependencies of OpenAI only, since I don't want how do I anymore. How do I do that? So first, since you've already listed all the packages installed in the virtual environment, I would do install another package because pip cannot do it by itself. So it's called pip dep3. Oh, sorry, pip install dep3. Okay, so we're installing pip dep3. So what this does is it would show the dependency tree of the packages that are installed in your environment. So if I run pip dep3, since it's already installed, as you can see here. So there's a how do I, and these are the dependencies of how do I, all those packages, and these are also the dependencies of OpenAI. You can see that some of the packages are actually common between how do I and OpenAI. So how do I pip remove? How do I there pip remove? How do I? Now that's an issue since because I have to list all the packages that and then like AIOHTTP. So basically it's either you list it manually or you just remove it and then reinstall the virtual env. Speaking of reinstalling virtual env, I want to also save a copy of the list of my packages. So what I will do pip freeze Pip freeze actually lists all the packages installed on your virtual environment. And if I do pip freeze, uh, put the output on requirements, the text. So that creates a requirements text. And you will include that on your repository. And then let's say if I create a fresh install, so let's say I would cheat that for a fresh install, deactivate, I would remove my current virtual environment for this folder. Okay. Assume that I know that it's 3.9. So that either it's added on the readme.md that it's run on 3.9. So I could reproduce the same virtual environment. So virtual venv dash python 3.9. Now, and then I enter source venv bin activate. So I'm inside. So to install a fresh install, you would do pip install -r requirements text. Okay, so that's how you do a fresh install given another um, given another repository that you downloaded somewhere. Okay, so yeah, as you can see, there are problems here. First is you saw that it's hard to remove top level packages and removing its dependencies. Second is actually pip doesn't actually resolve conflicts. So it can check like pip check can actually check if there are broken requirements or conflicting versions of requirements, but it does not resolve them or stop you from doing it. He's just gonna install whatever you told him to. So version um, there's no version conflict resolution with pip. So there are issues, and it's actually pretty a lot of steps involved in managing your dependencies in the old way. There are other tools that we have on our disposal to manage dependencies. So on the previous, we use virtual env, pip, and PyPy to manage our dependencies. You can also use, let's say, pyenv and pip and PyPy. So pyenv will also create a virtual environment, and it will also download different Python versions, straight from the net and not needed to install on the system. Problem is, this doesn't work on Windows. Venv actually is similar to virtual env, except that venv will use the Python version of your system Python. So if my system Python is 3.11, I can't do a virtual environment that uses 3.9 unless I install 3.9, make that as I'm able to run it on the system as 3.9 and then use 3.9 as the venv, like Python 3.9 and venv, something something. So yeah, that's why I usually use virtual env so I can manage multiple Python versions. Docker is also an alternative for a virtual environment. It's actually overkill for a virtual environment, if you ask me. In Docker, you can actually put what Python version do you want your Docker to run on. But again, you still need to use pip inside Docker so that it can install the packages that you need for your project. And also, I would say Docker is a bit overkill because it takes up a lot of space in my projects, in my experience. That's why I don't like using Docker and would go with virtual environment instead. Now, there are also good alternatives right now, which are both third party actually. Pipenv and Conda. So pipenv can also, aside from doing all the things that the previous tools that we have, it can also resolve package conflicts. And so is Conda, which is familiar to us, to the data scientists, data analysts out there. The main difference is you source your packages instead of PyPy, you source it on Anaconda. That's why Anaconda is a big download. And the thing is, if you need the packages more on Anaconda, then it's good sticking on Conda. But there are packages also in Anaconda that are not just for Python. There's also for R and other programming languages. And then there's a problem with Anaconda that it's not actually PyPy has more packages than Anaconda, so that's why they usually have to do pip install also on their Conda virtual environments. But yeah, if you're doing Conda, you're doing a great job. And also just make sure that you also list the requirements that you have in from Conda. Okay. So yeah, there's no one way of doing managing package or dependency management. There's no one way. It's just I am actually pushing for people to use poetry instead. Now poetry already both provides virtual environment and package management. As you can see on this table here, they could also change Python versions. It also download packages from PyPy and also can resolve package conflicts. And it has an extra feature that I will discuss later. But right now, I would like to do again my exercise earlier on virtual env and pip, on creating a new project and installing OpenAI and how do I, and then I will remove how do I and its dependencies and then reproduce it all over again. Okay, so going back, I'm gonna remove this. I'm gonna remove this. I'll deactivate first, and then I'll remove my previous installation of my sample project. So first thing to do is check if it's in your system already. So let's say Python 3 -m pip install poetry. It's already there. And it has more packages because it has more features. So instead of like doing mkdir sample project, I'm gonna use poetry to create my new project. Poetry, new sample project. So I created the package. So let's go inside sample project. And I'm gonna check what's inside. So as you notice, there is the virtual environment is not inside the folder. I'll show you where it is later. But the point with Poetry is I don't really need to access the virtual environment inside or most of the time. So yeah, I don't need to activate it as much, but we can also do that. So the problem with Poetry is if I create a new project, it's not automatically on the version that I want. So to edit that, I will go inside my project.toml. This is actually a standard. I actually forget which standard, something also PEP related, but it's also a standard for defining Python packages. This is the same format as you'll see on the Python packages in PyPy. So I would define that my Python would work 3.9 onwards. Okay, so I will save that and exit. And as you can see, it doesn't have like requirements yet. So, and then I will do poetry install. So what we'll do is it will install using I would create the virtual environment and a log file that contains all the packages uh, that this project depends on. So poetry install, and then let's do, so there's the log file that's long but similar to the requirements.txt, but not the same. And then we will try to check the shell, but I think we need to like, you're looking for the virtual environment, right? So let's list for virtual environment. So as you can see, so by default, it created the 3.11. So the name here, sample project, the name of the virtual environment is based on the folder name or the project name, the hash of the folder name, and then what version of Python it's running on. Now, since I did Poetry install and I edited it to 3.9, the PyProject.toml, it automatically created a new virtual environment with a 3.9 Python version. So just to show that it's running on 3.9, since right now I'm using 3.11. Now, to run something inside the virtual environment, I would use poetry run, and then followed by the command that I would like to run inside the virtual environment. That would be Python version. So that would actually include it's using 3.9. Now, important thing is how to add packages in our project using poetry. So you do poetry add. So we'll go straight with both OpenAI and how do I. So yeah, while it's installing, there's it's a bit long relatively. It is an issue for it is an issue in the Python community that we don't have one way of managing dependencies in Python compared to like Node.js. It only has npm, and that actually was evidenced when I checked the Reddit subreddit for Python, and there was this like that 600 plus upvotes and 300 plus comments of people not agreeing what is the one way of dealing with uh, managing dependencies in Python. So that is an important issue. But as of now, either having a virtual environment on one folder or on each project folder, or using Poetry or using Conda, that would work as long as the concepts I've mentioned is being followed. Okay, so now I was able to install OpenAI, and how do I? Now, the cool thing here is if you check the PyProject.toml, you see that OpenAI and how do I is added here. So this is a more readable version than the requirements.txt. And again, it's automatically added. Now, it's not just the OpenAI and how do I that was added. There was also other packages that was added along with it. So to check that, we can see Poetry Show. We can use Poetry Show to show the packages that were installed. So you can see the package, the version of the package, and the description also of the package, which is more descriptive than the one we have in pip. Now, I also want to show how each package depend on each other. So I can do poetry show dash dash tree. And it shows a tree, dependency tree version of each package. Now, it doesn't include the pip and the other package that are redundant. So yeah. So, and then I want to save this as like similar to requirements.txt. So what I will do is poetry export output requirements.txt. So where's requirements.txt? We can check requirements.txt. It's a bit long, but it's actually of the same format as the requirements.txt that we had on the previous discussion, because this just includes the package name, the version of the package, and also it also has like the dependencies on Python versions and even the hash to ensure the integrity of the package being downloaded. Okay, so there's one thing that we had issue before, which is deleting higher level packages. Like I want to get rid of how do I package now. I would just remove by doing poetry, remove how do I. And that not only removes how do I itself, but it also removes the packages that are needed to, I mean, the dependencies of how do I, but it does not include the dependencies that are also used by OpenAI. Cool, right? And just to prove it to you, see, it's just OpenAI. And the other cool thing is, if we check again, the Py project, the TOML, see, so it automatically updates the TOML file to remove the dependencies that you just removed. Okay. All right. So that actually is an easier way to manage our dependencies compared to the pip virtual env convo that we're used to. Just another, if you want to, like, this is a fresh install, you can just do poetry install. Okay, but make sure that the lock file is up to date, because that is actually what is using on the virtual environment file. Okay, so yeah, so aside from making our lives easier in terms of managing packages or managing dependencies, it can also upload packages to PyPy, like by itself. Pip and even Conda can do that. Usually we use Flit for uploading packages to PyPy, but now we can just straight up use poetry. Now I'm gonna also demo that to you. But before that, we have to like get our own PyPy token. So we go to pypy.org. We of course register. So you register there. Since I've already registered, by the way, the name, email address, and username doesn't actually matter in our method, because we're going to use a token instead of a password username combo in logging into PyPy. Okay, so and then we go to account settings, and then we go to API tokens. We add API tokens, or just reuse one of them. You can name it whatever you want, as long as it's just not the same name as the other tokens that you have. Let's say sample project. Select scope, all the projects, since I don't have a project yet. Add token, and then you make sure you copy this one. Copy token, since it will only appear once. So before setting up, before going to our project, then we have to set up on poetry. Now, how we do that? So you do poetry config pypy dash token dot pypy, and then we paste the API key that we have. And there, we have set up, this is actually global, by the way. So yeah, you might want to change if you have multiple accounts on PyPy. So now we're ready to upload a package. Now, I'm going to use another package that I have, CD, I'm using AI IMG Gen. This is just a wrapper for DAL-E image generator. So I'll do poetry build. So that would add the distribution, the wheel, so that will upload to Python, to PyPy, and then we'll do poetry publish. Uploading. It's a bit taking long. Hopefully it doesn't error out. If it errors out, either there's already the package name is already taken, or you have issues that you uploaded the package and you deleted, and you have to add another version of it, because it kind of remembers also the packages that you deleted. And going back to my Packages in PyPy. It's already here. View. This one, it's already set up on TOML, which readme.md file you're using to show up here. You also have the author. You saw that on the TOML file. So yeah, I can use this. I can use this on my other projects. So going back, cd dot sample, I can do poetry, add AI image gen. Now this is gonna error out because first of all, I tried it before. Second is there's a new version of OpenAI 26.5. And what I'll just do is I'll just remove first my OpenAI installation. And then I will add the IMG. At least it warns and it does not install if there are conflicts, which is what we're looking for in managing our dependencies. And then we'll add. And yeah, so it's easy to upload your packages now in PyPy. It's actually my first time uploading packages in PyPy. It's nice. So just to show that it's running on my current virtual environment, I will do poetry. You can do shell, but I don't want to access it as much as possible. But I can just do poetry, run Python. And then I would go inside the Python shell, inside the virtual environment. See, it's 3.9. And then I'll import AI image gen. And looking at it, help. So it just includes like the create image function where you add a prompt, how big and how many images you want to create. And then you also have the initialize for the OpenAI to add your secret key and also show model. So just summary for your model that's being used. So yeah, so we were able to like manage our dependencies and to even create our own PyPy using poetry. I mean PyPy package using poetry. Exciting, isn't it? So yeah, that actually ends my talk. But before that, I would like to introduce PizzaPy. Again, we're a pizza group. Well, we can be a pizza group. We're a Python users group based in Cebu, but we can be anywhere also. So we've been existing for 9 years, almost as old as Python PH since October, actually 2013. Already had like 56 meetups, small or big, in our belt, and looking to do more. If you want to like organize with us, you can contact us. And then we also have 935 members on our main account, which is the meetup.com. 456 members on our Facebook group and 19 chatter boxes on our Discord. So if you want to join one of our group, the QR codes are here. And yeah, that is actually the end of my talk. And thank you for listening. And we are now open for questions. Thank you.
While our participants are still typing in their questions, I also have some personal inquiries as well that I've typed in while watching your presentation. So first, do you see any emerging trends or like developments in the Python package dependency management ecosystem, and how do you think that it might impact yung use of tools like poetry in the future, if ever?
I'll be straight. No, I about the packages. There's really I'm really not into those packages. Honestly, I'm more of concerned of just the tools of getting those packages and storing it in the virtual environment. And as I did mention, I want to emphasize this that poetry might not be the end all be all. It's just in my opinion, it's the best tool out there for managing dependencies in Python. I did also mention earlier that I would also endorse pyenv, though it lacks some features that Poetry can deliver. Though Poetry is a newer library, so what we expect with newer library, there are less adoption. With less adoption, it's not that stable since there are a few people that use it, so few people see its flaws, and few people would contribute to fix it, or at least the developers of that package would fix. But I do hope that the trend for managing dependencies is Python itself releasing a proper package manager, again, just like npm, because I do remember, I think Mike Driscoll said earlier on his talk um, on robust Python, is that
Yeah.
there should be one way and one obvious way of doing it in Python. And right now, it's not applicable on managing dependencies. So hopefully Python does something about it. That's the trend that I want to see.
Mm. Yeah, I definitely agree with that one. I also have another question. Can you recommend any additional resources or other learning materials that our participants may also use, like maybe a YouTube channel that you use with learning poetry or some supplemental resources to go a deep dive with poetry, if ever?
The poetry website, poetry,
Mm,
I mean the PyPy, I mean the documentation. I'm trying to
yeah,
like Python. I'm just gonna link it.
sure.
Uh, Poetry Python. So python-poetry.org. That is definitely the best website to
Mm,
get
yeah.
info on how to use it. I mostly took my source from there. Wait, I'm just gonna post it on. Okay, I posted it on Vito. So yeah,
Nice.
that's the best source of info on how to learn that one.
Okay, thank you for that. We also have a question coming from Zorex. Do you encounter frequent freezes when generating lock file? I've been using it with my pet projects, but I experience it from time to time. How do you usually fix it?
Can you specify, like, is that on the poetry install part, or yeah, going on the poetry install part? I actually haven't used this long, because what I did was, I'm actually tired of the usual way of virtual and pip. So I kind of tried out poetry just last year. So I don't have enough experience to answer on the frequent freezes, because I haven't encountered that one, honestly. So I would usually just control C and all, because I did notice that since poetry does more stuff than pip does, it would sometimes be slower than pip. So I'm not it's not really what you call this. Uh, I'm not surprised about the issue that you've encountered, Zorex, on freezing the generating lock file, because it's poetry just more complexity is in pip, so it may hang up. Just restart it, control C, and just do it again.
Oh, nice. Xerox also clarified about, yeah, it's about the poetry install part.
Yeah.
And yeah, yeah. Thank you. And we got that. All right. Going once or twice, guys. If any participants still have any further questions.
Oh, there's another one.
All right. From Carl Vinyas, in the hypothetical scenario that poetry has a lot of packages to install or resolve dependency issues in a project, is there a way to give a way to time out or make it stop when it's taking too long or make it finish only partially?
Honestly, I'm not aware of that. feature as of now, and I'm not even aware of that feature in if there's one in pip. So yeah, let me check on that in a bit. But yeah, I'm actually aware.
All right. So hopefully you can contact Sir BJ later, Carl, so he can give you an answer as well. And by the way, BJ, if you want, you can also plug in your LinkedIn on where our participants may connect with you or message you for some questions or just some casual conversation and stuff like that. You can definitely put it in the video chat session.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll add. Also, I'll add. I just checked the docs. No, there's no timeout.
Hmm. So
But
yeah.
I think this is also applicable with with Bitend, but you can actually, let's say you have a development, what you call this, you have different environments in development, right? You have like a dev, you have like a prod environment, and then you install different packages. You can actually configure your py project.toml to specify which package you're just going to install in dev, which one you're just going to install in prod, something like that, or which are extras. So that might help to reduce the number of dependencies that you have in your project. But yeah, in a hypothetical scenario, I think your project sucks if you have too much dependency.